How's everyone today? My name is Janelli, and I will be presenting your webinar today. I hope everyone is having a great day. So let's get started. All right, so today's webinar will be about video conferencing. Okay, so for this webinar, our aims of training are to help you get the best out of using video conferencing by enabling you to identify common issues associated with video conferencing. So hopefully you will learn to overcome these issues, effectively use video conferencing, enjoy using video conferencing. The best way to get used to using video conferencing is through practice and building your confidence. And hopefully, this guide will enable you to do this by helping you overcome some of the common pitfalls of video conferencing. So, one of the first things we want to discuss would be the room dynamics. And within the room dynamics, we'll talk about lighting, background colors, background textures, and things like that. So, background colors. Large areas of bright white are less desirable, and that's mainly because areas of large white have a tendency of bouncing light off of them and therefore can create shadows and not very appealing lighting for your video conferencing. So, if you have bright white walls and you cannot necessarily paint them for your video conferencing, what I've done in the past is I've taken maybe a sheet, a bed sheet, a really light blue or a pastel bed sheet, and I've hung it up on the wall behind me. I've also bought um, a tablecloth from the dollar store in a very light color and set that up behind me. And so those are some simple ways of kind of offsetting that bright white background. Also, you may want to add using one of the backgrounds available to you on your conferencing platform, whether Zoom will have some already um, added backgrounds in there. I know Google Meets, and Teams also have added backgrounds in there. So you can use one of those backgrounds because adding a background or at least blurring it can help eliminate distraction. Zoom, as I was saying, they do allow you to change your virtual background to an image or video you create, or they have stock pictures, and Skype and Microsoft Teams allows you to blur your background completely. Again, with the onset of video conferencing, I know not many employers expect you to go home and redecorate. So if you happen to be in a situation where you can't avoid having that really busy background that could possibly become a distraction, blurring it is a fantastic option to try to help lessen the distractions. And um, although it is tempting, avoid setting your virtual backgrounds to something even more distracting than your real life background, such as a fire breathing dragon. I have had it where I had a student that I was teaching. This is when I was teaching in school, and it was a theater class, and they were doing a monologue. And they were trying to set the ambiance by adding this very colorful background, and they were trying to make it part of their scene, but it actually just became a complete distraction and I could not focus on the students' performance. So I had to ask them to redo it by taking the background off. So just be careful of that. You want to keep it to nice, simple backgrounds, something that's not going to distract the presenter or the host. Background textures. Again, a textured walls or curtains are very good because you have less reflection coming off of them. You can't really tell, but my wall behind me is actually textured. It looks pretty flat, but it does have some texture to it. And it's also kind of a cream color to try to avoid some of that bounce back from the lighting. And glass should try to be avoided as much as possible as it can cause a reflection. This is very true for me, especially with my glasses. Constantly, I can see the reflection of my screen on the glasses. So just be careful with that. If you do wear glasses, be careful where you position your lighting because glasses definitely pick up that light. All right, so for lighting, we should try to keep curtains and doors shut. And this will help with the saturation of light so you don't have so much light that it causes some weird shadows. Lighting should come from ahead. So I'm going to move my computer now if and flip it. You'll see that my lighting comes from the dining room light. I do have a ring light that I use sometimes when it's night outside, just to add additional light. But again, because of my glasses, I have it available where I can set it up desktop to be right in front of me. But I have it overhead because of my glasses to try to avoid some of that light bounce back. Um, and then again, be careful not to be positioned in front of the lighting as this can cause shadows. Um, and overhead lights preferably should not be seen by the camera as this can cause interference. I know they have some lights that clip onto your screen, and those sometimes can start drooping and cause interference with the camera. So you want to be very careful of those. Okay. Microphone. Microphone is very important. First, you want to try to find a microphone that suits you well. In my case, it comes with my earbuds. I know some people like to set up a separate microphone so that way it could pick up better noises. Also, the best ones that I've always recommended for my students, if you can afford them, are the over the head earbuds or over the head headphones, sorry, with the microphone, because that microphone is able to be placed and positioned differently and it's much more comfortable. It's a better sound quality. So those are the ones that I normally recommend. But again, the good ones tend to be a little pricey. So you may have to work up to that one. So for positioning, make sure that the placement of your microphone is important. Again, you want to be careful if you have a separate microphone that your microphone's not right here and you're not almost eating the microphone. 2 to 3 feet is the best distance. Again, this is if you're talking about a separate microphone from your headset. From your headset, you can't really control the distance, but you can control the positioning. Um, and then try to have the microphone at an equal distance from all participants. What I mean by this is if you are having a meeting and you guys are all on the call with a host on of the video call, make sure that your microphone is equidistant from all of the people involved in the meeting. I found this to be true. Again, when I was teaching in the classroom, I was teaching hybrid classes. So I would have some students online and some in the class. And in order for them to be able to participate with each other, I found that placing the computer and my microphone in the middle of the class was beneficial. So that way, everyone was able to hear the participants in the classroom, and the online students were able to flawlessly interact with the in person students. So that was very, very helpful. And now we're going into an era where more things are becoming online and virtual meetings. So just keep that in mind. 90%, I would probably say about 95% of video conferencing is one on one. So the placement of your microphone is more just test it out and make sure that it's not too close to your mouth where it sounds like you're yelling or your words are getting muffled or garbled up. And it's not too far from your mouth, well, that it's not picking up all of your words. Be careful with unwanted noise. Microphones are very sensitive and they pick up many unwanted noises, such as side conversations, rustling paper, and tapping pens. In my case, it is my dogs. No matter what I do, I've tried locking them up in several different places and they still get through. So when it's something really, really, really important that I want to make sure that they are not heard, I either ask someone to come pick them up and watch them for me, or in this case, I will put them in the garage with a fan in there and some water, and have them in there for a little while until I can finish my meeting or conference, so that way they don't interrupt. Again, I know life is happening while you guys are at home, so just be careful. My mom has a tendency, for example, even though I'm in class and I'm working, she doesn't think about it. So she will sit in the living room close to where I'm working and we'll turn on the TV and have that blaring full volume. And I'm like, Mom, I'm in class or something. So just, be aware of everything around you. Some things you can't control. I had the other day, the gentleman that cuts my grass was cutting the grass right outside from where I set up for classes, and all you could hear is the lawnmower. That wasn't something I can control. So what I would try to do is mute the microphone. So we'll go into muting the microphone in just a bit. But try to avoid moving the microphone during your video conferencing, as this can cause a loud interference on the other end. Even when your microphone is in your laptop or iPad, it happens a lot for me with kids. They don't realize that their microphone's in their iPad and they'll start moving around their iPad as they're answering questions, and all I hear is the rustling noise of the microphone being moved or the microphone hitting their clothes and things like that. So just be very, very careful and very aware of all of that. And also remember that when you first connect to a call, your audio comes through before the visual. So be very careful what you say. Um, a good rule of thumb for me is when I do the audio and video check before I enter a meeting, I always mute my microphone there. After I test my microphone and make sure that it is working, I always muted it before I enter the meeting. So that way, no unwanted noise comes through. So, muting the microphone. If you are not talking for any length of time, you may want to mute your microphone. And for me, this is just kind of standard practice. Again, it's a little bit different with our program when we're in lingo because we're having conversations, but this is more when you have a presenter, they're giving a presentation and what have not, and they're not really stopping for questions, and it's not a Q&A type session, then you want to make sure to mute your microphone so that way it does not disrupt the presenter. But you also want to make sure that if you are going to speak, that you turn on your microphone before you answer the presenter. And then for some platforms, the meeting host may want to take control of the microphones. So I know, for example, Zoom, um, when I was teaching in the hybrid classes, I would take control of the microphones for the students, because if not, they'd forget that their mic was on, and they do crazy things like go to the bathroom and things like that. So I would always make sure to take control of the microphone. But yeah, if the presenter does not take control, just be careful when you mute and unmute yourself, and just be very wary of that. Ooh, colors. So what not to wear for your video conferencing? Um, you want to be careful of different patterns, noisy clothes, or bright and distracting colors. So let's talk about colors. So colors that work well when video conferencing are pastel shades, a bright blue, pinks, greens, um, anything that's gonna accent your face. That's why those pastel colors work well, because with your lighting, they pick up a little bit of lighting and they kind of bounce back to your face. Colors you want to avoid would be dark blue, black, red, white. And again, those are for the same reason. Lighting will absorb, those colors will absorb the lighting and not bouncing very much to your face, and therefore can create more shadows on your face. Um, you want to be careful to avoid light colored clothing, as it can appear washed out at the other end. And then avoid colors that tend to wash you out or don't flatter your skin tone. For example, pale colors that are close to your natural skin tone, you don't want to run the risk of looking naked on camera. And I have seen that before with a really nice taupe sweater. It was a really pretty sweater, but at first glance, it was like, wait, is that person wearing clothes? And they were. It just so happened I noticed the fold on the neck, so I knew it was a turtleneck sweater. But that first glance, I was like, wait, let me turn the camera off. So be very careful of that. Um, Other things you want to be careful of are patterns. So plain clothing is ideal. Patterned clothing or anything with defined stripes are to be avoided. So we have like the example of the black and white striped jacket with the hat. Um, you want to be careful with that because, again, it could be very distracting, a pattern. Yes, it may look good, it may look nice for going out, but on camera, it could be a distracting pattern for the presenter or your fellow um, conferencing colleagues. So, stripes and checks, especially the smaller scale prints, can blur and be a distraction on camera. So large patterns can also be distracting, as they tend to dominate and take attention away from your face. Again, as with wall covering, soft textures work best, and avoid any clothes that are shiny. So if you see the example of this gentleman with the really loud flower jacket, again, it's a really cool jacket, but it is definitely a distracting jacket. On camera, the presenter, especially if he wore that, say for an interview, the interviewer may just be focused on that jacket and not really on what he is saying. So you want to make sure not to distract from yourself. You're the star of the video conferencing. We don't want your clothes to outshine you. And then noise. Be careful, because although most clothes make virtually no noise, some clothes can make a rustling noise, which can be picked up by the microphone. So it is important to make sure that you wear soft fabrics. Also, I know some women's blouses come with different designs on them, that beading and things like that, that can also make noise as you're sitting down or moving around in it. You don't think about it until you sit down and have somebody tell you something about your clothes. And that happened to me, I think, I think it was like the first or second video call. It was an interview that I was doing. And first of all, I was in the car because I wasn't thinking about it. I had booked 2 appointments at the same time. So I was doing this acting gig, but then I had this interview. And so I was dressed for the acting gig, and uh, my outfit was kind of like a jogger. It was all black, so I thought it was fine for the interview, but it kind of had that like plastic rustling noise. And I pulled over for the interview because I was in my car. And as I was talking, I moved to say something, and the interviewer was like, "What's that noise?" And I couldn't think of it. And then when I moved, I realized that it was my clothes. So I apologized vehemently. But yeah, it was just one of those things. I never thought about the clothes making noise and being picked up by the microphone, but it definitely was, and it was a distraction for her. So be careful of that. Also, I know a lot of metallic fabrics are coming in style. Um, be careful of anything, even little things. For example, my mom has a blouse that has like little glass diamonds on it, and they're small, but still within those diamonds, there's tiny mirrors, and they definitely pick up and bounce off that light. So be careful with things like that. So I want to take a couple of minutes to review what I've presented so far. Um, and then we will open it up to any questions and answers. So, a couple of things we'll talk about, again, reviewing the mute yourself when not speaking, making sure your technology works, which is one of the number one things you want to make sure of, looking into the camera, paying attention, being on time, frame make sure to frame yourself correctly, and be careful of your lighting. So, again, important, mute yourself when not speaking. So, even though you may not be speaking and think you're being quiet, most microphones can pick up minor background noises like coughs, sneezes, or typing. These sounds can easily distract other video conferencing participants and potentially even cause an annoyance. So let's say you're typing during the meeting to try to get work done. While you may be able to get away with it, you might not want your boss calling you out for not paying attention. Make it a practice out of common courtesy to your colleagues to mute yourself whenever you're not talking. For most video conferencing software, it's as simple as a click of a button. I know for me, I have a mute button on my laptop that I can easily press, and it mutes me. Also, be careful when you are muted, um, that you, again, refresher, that you unmute if you have been asked a question and they're waiting for your response. Um, Sometimes, I think Zoom, for example, you can use your space bar to temporarily mute. So you could press your space bar, give your answer, and let it go, and then you'll still be muted. So make sure whatever platform you use that you look into how their microphone systems work for muting and unmuting yourself. Be on time. This should be standard with any meeting, video or otherwise. However, when you're dialing into a video conference, it's especially important. While you might be able to get away with sneaking into a physical meeting late, everything is more visible in a video conference. Eye contact is extremely important during a video conference, as you may want the person or team that's conferencing in to feel engaged. So when you walk in late, you'll be making a noise and distract anyone who is speaking in the room. This can result in confusion and stoppages. Additionally, when you're on time for a meeting, it'll make getting set up with the technology easier and less painless so the meeting can start on time. This is especially, for a work meeting, anything you're getting paid for, you want to make sure that you're on time. For me, I try to, at the bare minimum, log in 5 minutes or whatever time it is. Usually I'm there, but at the bare minimum, I try to be there 5 minutes ahead of time. You want to give yourself time to make sure to check your technology, to test it out, with enough time to still make it to that meeting on time. So that is very, very important, especially again in a work video conference. If something were to happen, you're having computer issues, which has happened to me, it'll give you time to restart your computer, do whatever, try to troubleshoot any of your problems before your meeting starts. And when you're not on time, it gives the appearance of not caring or not being interested. So you want to be careful with that. You want to be careful not to give that appearance to your boss. Um, and if you are having technical issues, make sure you have a line of communication of someone you can reach out to and let them know, hey, I'm having technical issues. I've tried this and that, and I'm still not working. But if you wait until the last minute to try to log in, it's hard to get all of that done. Okay? Technology. Very, very important. Ensure your technology works correctly. Um, Always test your microphone, always test your camera. It's happened to me before where I've done a platform that I've done several times. My microphone has always worked. I haven't switched out the microphone, and one day it didn't work. And so I had to restart my computer. Again, I had enough time to do it, but it was that extra step. Do not count on the fact that it worked 5 minutes ago or that it worked, an hour ago when you last had a meeting. Before any meeting, you should always take a minute to test your technology and make sure that your video is working properly, your microphone is working properly, that your internet is working properly. Um, if you have the ability to hardwire your laptop or computer, I do recommend using an Ethernet versus the Wi-Fi. I know I have a computer that does not have an Ethernet port, and I constantly have issues to where I have to get on my mom's computer when she's not working from home. I end up having to use hers so I can hardwire myself in. So keep that in mind. If working from home, doing a lot of video conferencing, you may want to invest in making sure that your computer is able to be hardwired into your router. Um, You don't want to have to delay a meeting with an important client because your video conferencing system isn't working properly. You need to do a few test runs with internal employees before trying to land the next big investor. So find someone willing to help and make sure you understand the process fully before starting your first video conference. This will make sure everything runs smoothly during the real thing. I remember when I first had Zoom, because again, I'll be honest with you, I am not the most technologically advanced person at all. And so when I had to, during the pandemic, when everything first got shut down, and I had just become a teacher in school. I was teaching a subject I wasn't familiar with, and now I'm teaching from home. I was going crazy. So I remember that weekend before our first official day of teaching from home, I called my best friend. I'm like, hey, can you get on the computer and work this with me and help me get on Zoom? And we did. She helped me get on Zoom. She showed me how to do different things with Zoom, how to mute the people, how to change backgrounds. So it's always important, if it's your first time using the technology, or even the first time like you just got a brand new computer and you've been using Zoom but you haven't tried it on this new computer. It's always very important to make sure that that technology works and actually test it with someone. Don't just get on the screen before you enter the meeting and think that's good enough. If you are able to get someone to help you to actually do like a mini video conferencing or tester call, please do that, to make sure everything is running smoothly. Because again, especially in a business setting, you don't want to look bad to a potential new client or new student. Clothing, again, remember, wear appropriate clothing for the event. If it's a business meeting, you want to make sure that you're wearing nice business attire, or nothing too casual. The other day, my mom, she works for a law firm, and she was having an orientation because it's a new law firm that she's going to. And everybody in the conference is nicely dressed, business attire, like in the office. And one of the lawyers, who I don't know what he was doing, but apparently he was running late. He comes on and he's like in a t-shirt, hair is disheveled, he's sweating, and everybody just kind of stared at him. And my mom's like, come here, come look at this. Like, even she had to point it out because it was just inappropriate for the work call that was going on. Again, if it was just a chat amongst friends, that's one thing. But for the work call and him representing the law firm, it kind of looked bad. So be careful. You want to make sure that you are projecting the image you want people to see. Framing the camera correctly. This is one of my favorites because you have to be careful with this one, especially if you have a separate camera that's not built into your laptop. Um, I've seen people put cameras in weird places. So you want to be careful that your camera's not like facing off like this and you're like on part of the screen. Another one is that they'll have the camera a little too low and it's kind of facing up and going up their nose. I don't necessarily want to see what you are thinking. I've even seen it to where people, thinking they're getting better angles, will put a camera up here and then they're staring up into their camera, um, because they have it set up on a desk where they can put it high like that, and so they're looking like this, and it's just really weird angles. So make sure again that when you test the video quality before you enter your meeting, that you frame yourself, that you try to mostly be centered, that you're not too close to the camera like this or way too far from the camera. Make sure, they can see a nice portion of you. And again, depending what the video conferencing calls for. Um, Again, I do act on the side, so I do theater. So there are times where they need to see full body. So make sure that you frame yourself to where they can see full body and still see your face. Or in the case of a business call, make sure that there's um, ample from the shoulders up and that they're not just seeing your face or, seeing you stand up and seeing your torso. So be careful of that. So we've all been on video calls where we end up looking up people's nostrils or seeing the side of their face. When you're on video, make sure you frame your camera in a way that feels natural and allows you to look at the camera. Sit at eye level to the lens and try to position yourself so that it shows midsection up. Placing it too high leaves the other participants staring down at you like a bad TV show, and putting a camera too low can lead to unflattering and awkward angles. So, again, be careful of that. And I showed you some examples by moving the camera around. And then have the right light. Um, Poor lighting conditions have an enormous effect on the video quality that you send. You'll want to make sure that there is enough light in the room you're in so that your video isn't grainy and unwatchable. Try not to mix natural lighting and office lighting unless your office bulbs are daylight white. You also don't want any faces being lit from below, as this makes you look cartoonish villain from a silent film. Lighting from the sides will make faces look the best, so try for that if you have the ability. So again, if you look at the pictures down here, obviously people aren't doing video conferencing from a cave, but that is one of the things you want to avoid is that backlight to where it gives you shadows and erases a lot of the expressions on your face. One of the big things that I've heard presenters, teachers, hosts say about video conferencing is they really are more focused on your facial expressions now through video conferencing. Um, it's very apparent when you're doing things like rolling your eyes or showing that disdain or not wanting to be there. Um, Whereas maybe sometimes in person in a room, you can hide that behind some of your colleagues. But when it's on that one-on-one level, bosses are noticing and presenters are noticing. So be careful. You want to be well lit, but be careful to also, because you are well lit and they can see your facial expressions very well, to control your expressions. Um, if you are the presenter, make sure that you try to have as pleasant of a face as possible while you're presenting. Try to make sure to keep that smile on your face. I'm not saying, grin the whole time, but you want to make sure not to get the furrows or that hard thinking, because again, that can come across as you're angry, and the people you are presenting to may receive the message differently. So be careful of your body positioning, where you're presenting from. If you are sitting down, make sure that you're not all slouchy like this in your chair and kind of leaning around and filing around. Um, I know a lot of people have gotten very comfortable chairs for their home offices. So just make sure you are still sitting up, looking energetic, looking like you are ready and you want to be there and you want to learn or you want to receive this information. Excuse me. Make sure that you look into the camera. And this has happened to me several times where I'm teaching a class and I'll have a student, and it happens a lot, especially when people have multiple screens and they don't realize it, because they will have, the video conferencing on one screen and maybe they're over here working on something else. So you're getting that profile of them. So even though they are listening and paying attention to the presenter, it may seem like it's not. So you want to make sure that you are looking into that camera. One of the common mistakes is looking at the video feed instead of the camera when speaking to a remote participant. Excuse me. While it may seem like the right thing to do, it actually appears as if you're looking off and not paying attention. So this will make you come across as more aloof and less professional. Looking into the camera lens is the equivalent of looking into the person's eyes. So practice doing so until you're comfortable with it. Again, try to always know where your camera is positioned and make sure that you are looking to it and not off to the side. Um, Again, if you are in a meeting, looking into the camera gives the presenter that feeling that you are giving them your full attention. Nothing else is more important than that meeting at that time. So, this one's very important. Make sure you pay attention. Um, you don't want to check your emails or working on your PowerPoint presentation during video conferences. Checking your phones is a big one. Several times I've gotten this, and people just like looking at their phones. I've had students have their phones off to the side thinking I can't see them, and they have a movie or video playing off to the side. Obviously, this is more like my high school students. And it's like, hey guys, I need you to focus. I'm giving you your lesson. This is going to be on the test. So be careful of that. Um, Not only does research suggest only 3% of people can multitask effectively, but you also look rude to your participants. Um, we've all been to bad video conferencing meetings, but with new technology, they're getting better and better. Um, Again, the paying attention, that one, I can't say it enough. And I know most of us are trying to multifunction, multitask throughout the day, and several times, like I'll see a student and they think I can't tell what they're doing, but they're over here and they're either playing a game on another screen or they'll my high school students were the worst. They would be working on their homework for next class during my class because they'd wait till the last minute. And one of the worst things you want to have happen is that the presenter calls on you and you don't know what's going on because you were focused on the other task instead of that meeting. So for however long your meeting is, make sure you give that presenter your undivided attention for that time. All right. So thank you guys for listening to my presentation. Does anyone have any questions and comments? I am going to stop sharing the screen now. Anyone have any questions or comments? Anything you need clarified of anything in the presentation that was not clear? I do apologize. Excuse me for a second. I'm going to take a sip of drink, but please feel free to ask any questions if you have. Um, Someone did ask what to do if you don't have a studio light. Um, what I did was I bought these light bulbs for mouse. They are LED light bulbs, and that's what I use in the overhead lighting for once I decided what space I was going to use as my office or classroom space. I put in those light bulbs in the overhead lighting to make sure I had good enough lighting. Any other questions? Well, I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend and thanks for joining the webinar. Bye bye.